Hello. Today we're stepping into the world of powerful Mafia bosses, where love, power, and betrayal always go hand in hand. If you open that door right now, they'll see you. The voice outside my car was low, calm, male. The kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to make your heart stop beating for half a second. Rain hammered against the windshield hard enough to shake my old Honda Civic, each drop exploding beneath the yellow parking lot lights like tiny bursts of glass. My neck ached from sleeping twisted against the driver's side window, and my legs had gone numb sometime around midnight. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then the knocking came again, 3 slow taps against the fogged-up glass beside my face. My entire body locked up. Fear crawled down my spine so fast it made my stomach clench. I blinked into the darkness outside the window, trying to see through the rain and condensation. All I could make out was a tall shadow standing beside my car. Broad shoulders, dark coat, motionless. My hand tightened around the pepper spray buried beneath my blanket. The parking lot behind the closed grocery store had felt safe when I pulled in around 11. Quiet, empty, cheap enough not to attract attention. I had told myself I would only sleep there one night, just until I figured things out, just until I got enough money together to put gas back in the car and maybe afford another week at a motel. But life had a funny way of humiliating you slowly before it destroyed you all at once. "Who's there?" I whispered. My voice cracked from dehydration and exhaustion. The figure outside didn't answer immediately. Rainwater rolled down the black sleeve of his coat while he glanced toward the far side of the parking lot instead of looking at me. That scared me more than if he'd stared directly into my eyes. It meant he was watching something else, or someone else. "Lock your doors," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. They were already locked. I checked anyway. My fingers trembled so badly I nearly dropped the pepper spray. That's when headlights appeared across the lot. A white pickup truck rolled slowly between the empty rows of parking spaces, moving too slowly for this hour of the night. My pulse began hammering harder. The man outside my window took one step backward, enough for the parking lot lights to finally hit part of his face. Dark hair slicked back by rain, sharp jawline, eyes darker than the storm above us. Expensive black coat, tailored perfectly over a broad frame. He looked completely out of place standing beside my rusted Honda with rain soaking his shoulders. Like danger wrapped in luxury, the pickup kept moving, crawling, hunting. My mouth went dry. "Do you know them?" he asked, without taking his eyes off the truck. "No." The lie slipped out too quickly. His gaze shifted to me then, straight through the glass, straight through me. I had spent most of my life around men who talked too loudly, smiled too fast, demanded too much, but this man didn't move like that. Everything about him felt controlled, measured. Worse, he looked at me like he already knew the truth. The pickup slowed near the end of the row. I ducked lower, instinctively, beneath the blanket, piled over my lap. The stranger noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like him probably noticed everything. "How long have you been sleeping in this car?" he asked. I stared at him without answering. My cheeks burned with humiliation. The inside of my Civic smelled like cold coffee, fast food wrappers, and failure. 2 duffel bags filled with clothes were stacked in the back seat beside a pillow I stole from my old apartment before the landlord changed the locks yesterday morning. My entire life fit inside this car now. 25 years old. College debt. 2 part-time jobs, gone in the same month. 0 family willing to answer my calls anymore. The pickup truck paused 3 rows away. My heartbeat became painful. "Claire." My blood froze solid. The voice came from the truck. Male. "Angry?" "Too familiar." "I know that's your car." I stopped breathing. Nathan. Of course he'd found me. My ex-boyfriend had always been good at finding me when I wanted to disappear. The man outside my window finally looked back toward the truck again. His expression never changed, but something cold settled over his face. Something dangerous. "Stay inside," he said softly. Then he stepped away from my car and into the rain. Nathan climbed out of the pickup almost immediately. Even from this distance, I recognized the swagger in his walk, the irritation, the beer bottle dangling loosely from one hand. "There you are," Nathan snapped. "You ignoring my calls now?" I shrank lower in my seat automatically. Shame and panic twisted together in my chest until I could barely breathe. But the stranger didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply stood between Nathan and my car, with one hand resting calmly inside the pocket of his black coat. "Move," Nathan barked. "This doesn't concern you." The stranger tilted his head slightly. "You've been looking for her all night?" His voice remained calm. Nathan laughed bitterly. "She's my girlfriend." Something flickered across the stranger's face then. Not anger exactly. Worse, disappointment. Like Nathan had confirmed something ugly he already suspected. Rain poured harder around them. Somewhere nearby, thunder rolled across the city skyline. The stranger stepped slightly sideways, enough for the parking lot light to fully illuminate him. My breath caught. Jesus Christ. He looked like one of those men you only saw stepping out of black SUVs in Manhattan outside luxury hotels. Expensive watch glinting beneath his sleeve, tailored black wool coat, sharp cheekbones, storm-dark eyes that belonged on magazine covers instead of empty parking lots at 2 a.m. Nathan seemed to notice it too because his confidence slipped for half a second. "Who the hell are you?" he muttered. The stranger ignored the question completely. "She doesn't want to go with you." Simple words, quiet words, but something about the way he said them made the air feel heavier. Nathan scoffed. "And how would you know?" The stranger finally smiled. It wasn't warm. "Because she locked the doors the second she saw your truck." Silence. Nathan glanced toward my car. Toward me. Fury flashed across his face. "Claire," he shouted, "open the damn door!" I flinched so hard my shoulder slammed against the window. The stranger heard it. His eyes shifted briefly toward me, again. Softer, this time. Then he looked back at Nathan. "You should leave." Nathan let out a short laugh. "Or what?" The stranger took one slow step forward through the rain. "Or you're going to embarrass yourself tonight." Something changed instantly. I saw it happen in real time. Nathan's expression tightened. His shoulders stiffened. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. The stranger didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten him, but suddenly Nathan looked very aware of the black SUV parked at the edge of the lot, very aware of the 2 men in dark suits standing beside it beneath the rain. Oh God, my pulse stumbled. I hadn't even noticed them before. Nathan noticed them now. "Whatever," he muttered finally. "She's not worth this." The words still hurt. Funny how, even after everything, they still hurt. He climbed back into his truck, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot fast enough to spray water across the empty asphalt. Silence returned, slowly, after the truck disappeared. Just rain. Thunder. My uneven breathing. The stranger remained standing there another few seconds before walking back toward my car. He stopped beside the driver's side window again. "You can sleep here again tomorrow night if you want," he said quietly. "But not tonight." I swallowed hard. "Why do you care?" His dark eyes met mine through the fog glass. "Because," he said softly, "people shouldn't have to survive like this." I should have said no. Any sane woman would have. But the rain kept falling in heavy silver sheets across the empty parking lot, and my hands would not stop shaking long enough to even start my car. The stranger stood beside the driver's side window, waiting patiently, like he already knew exhaustion had finally beaten my pride sometime around midnight. I cracked the window barely half an inch. Cold rain air rushed inside immediately. "I do not even know your name," I whispered. His eyes stayed on mine. Calm, steady. Damien Moretti. The name hit me strangely. Familiar, somehow. like something I had heard before in passing conversations or local news reports playing on televisions inside bars and laundromats. But my brain felt too tired to place it. Claire Bennett. His gaze softened slightly when I said my name, not enough to make him less intimidating, just enough to make him feel human. Claire, he repeated quietly, like he was testing how it sounded. Thunder rolled above us again. Somewhere downtown, sirens echoed faintly through the storm. Damien glanced toward my back seat, where my entire life was piled beneath blankets and grocery bags. How long since you slept in an actual bed? Heat crawled into my cheeks instantly. I am fine. One dark eyebrow lifted slightly. You were sleeping in a grocery store parking lot during a thunderstorm. Fair point. I looked away first. Embarrassment sat heavy in my chest. I used to have a decent apartment in Brooklyn. Used to have routines. Morning coffee from the corner deli. Rent due on the first. Tiny bathroom with terrible water pressure. Normal problems. Then my bookstore cut hours. Then closed entirely 2 months later. Then the medical bills from my mother started stacking faster than I could pay them. One missed rent payment became two. Two became an eviction notice taped to my door while strangers avoided eye contact walking past me in the hallway. Funny how quickly the world stopped seeing you once you started losing things. Damien watched me quietly through the cracked window while rainwater slid down his black coat in thin streams. You are sick, he said suddenly. I am tired. You are both. I hated that he was right. My throat burned every time I swallowed, and my body ached beneath 3 layers of clothing and a discount store blanket that smelled faintly like detergent and gasoline. I had spent the last 3 nights sleeping in different parking lots across the city because I was terrified someone would notice a woman living alone in her car. Terrified someone worse than Nathan would find me. Damien glanced once more toward the black SUV, waiting at the edge of the lot. The 2 men beside it remained perfectly still beneath umbrellas, scanning the empty streets with unsettling focus. They looked less like chauffeurs and more like men who protected dangerous people for a living. Those men work for you? I asked quietly. Yes. What do you do exactly? For the first time since I met him, something unreadable flickered across his face. Enough to know this is not safe for you. That was not an answer. But something told me pushing him would be a mistake. Rain drummed harder against the roof of my Honda. My stomach growled loudly enough that I nearly died from humiliation. Damien definitely heard it. His eyes dropped briefly toward the paper bag sitting open beside me. Half a pack of crackers, a bruised banana, nothing else. When did you last eat? He asked. Earlier. Another lie. Another look from him that said he knew it. God, I was too tired for this man. Too tired for his quiet voice and expensive coat and eyes that somehow noticed everything I wanted hidden. Damien stepped slightly closer to the car. There is a diner 3 blocks from here, he said calmly. Open 24 hours. You can follow my car there, if that makes you feel safer. And then what? Then you eat something hot, and after that, his jaw tightened, almost invisibly. After that, we decide whether you are going back to sleeping in this parking lot. The words should have sounded controlling. Instead, they sounded irritated, like the idea genuinely bothered him. I studied him carefully through the rain-streaked window. Men like Damien Moretti did not stop for women sleeping in old Hondas. Men like him passed us every day without seeing us at all. Expensive men in expensive cars with expensive lives. But here he was standing in the middle of a storm at 2:30 in the morning talking to me like I mattered. That scared me more than Nathan did. Why are you helping me? I asked, softly. Damien looked toward the city skyline glowing faint gold through the rain. Because somebody should have helped you before it got this bad. Something in my chest cracked painfully at that. Not because of the words themselves, because of how simply he said them. No pity, no judgment, just truth. I looked down at my steering wheel quickly before he could see my eyes filling. God, I hated crying, especially in front of strangers. I can pay you back eventually, I whispered. A shadow of amusement touched his face for the first time. Claire, the way he said my name made my pulse stumble. I am not worried about diner coffee money. Before I could answer, headlights suddenly flashed across the parking lot entrance, another vehicle turning in fast. My entire body tensed instantly. Damien noticed. Of course he noticed. The black SUV near the curb came alive immediately. One of the suited men touched his earpiece, while the other stepped away from the vehicle slightly, posture sharpening. Everything about the moment changed. The air itself felt tighter somehow, dangerous. Damien's expression turned cold in a way that sent chills down my spine. Stay in the car, he said quietly. A dark sedan rolled through the lot slower than Nathan's truck had. Tinted windows. Expensive. It stopped briefly near the entrance before continuing past us. Too slowly, watching. Damien followed the car with his eyes the entire time. I realized then that whatever world this man belonged to, it was not normal. Wealth did not make people stand guard in the rain at 3 a.m. Wealth did not make strangers track parking lots with black sedans. Fear did that. Power did that. The sedan finally disappeared back onto the street. Silence settled again, except for the storm. Damien looked back at me. You are not staying here tonight. Not a question this time. Something about his tone made my heartbeat quicken. Damien, he stepped closer to the cracked window again. Rainwater clung to his dark hair. His eyes looked almost black beneath the parking lot lights. Claire, he said softly, if someone had wanted to hurt you tonight, nobody would have known where to find you. The truth of that settled coldly into my stomach. Because he was right. Nobody would have noticed. Nobody would have looked for me until my mother wondered why I stopped answering texts 3 days from now. And suddenly I felt very small, sitting inside that freezing Honda, while a storm swallowed the city around me. Damien held my gaze another second before speaking again. Come with me, he said quietly. Just until morning. I should have refused him. Every survival instinct I had spent the last year building told me not to get into a black SUV with a man who looked like he belonged on the front page of financial magazines and crime documentaries at the same time. But exhaustion is a dangerous thing. It slowly erases the line between caution and desperation until all you can think about is warmth, sleep, safety. Damien stood beside my car waiting quietly while rain poured around us in silver sheets. He was not pressuring me. Somehow, that made it worse. Men like Nathan pushed, demanded. Damien simply waited like he already understood that life had cornered me long before he arrived tonight. I looked down at my steering wheel. The faded Honda emblem stared back at me beneath cracked plastic and worn leather. This car had become my apartment, my closet, my hiding place. Leaving it felt strangely terrifying. Just until morning, I asked softly. Just until morning, Damien repeated. His voice stayed calm, steady enough to make me believe him against my better judgment. I hesitated another few seconds before finally unlocking the door. The click sounded unnaturally loud beneath the storm. Damien stepped backward immediately, giving me space as I pushed the door open. Cold rain, air wrapped around me instantly. My knees nearly buckled when I stood up. God. I was more exhausted than I realized. Damien noticed. Of course he noticed. One of his hands moved slightly toward my elbow before stopping halfway like he caught himself. Easy, he said quietly. Embarrassment crawled across my face. I hated appearing weak, especially in front of someone who looked this composed, standing in the middle of a thunderstorm at 3 a.m. I grabbed my backpack from the passenger seat automatically. Damien glanced toward the back seat filled with blankets and duffel bags. Leave the rest, he said. My driver will move your car. My head snapped up immediately. No, the answer came too fast. Too sharp. Damien stilled. Claire, nobody drives my car. Silence stretched between us beneath the rain. I knew how irrational it sounded. My Honda barely functioned anymore. The heater only worked when it wanted to. The passenger window jammed every few days. But it was mine, the last thing in my life nobody had taken yet. Damien studied me carefully before giving a small nod. All right. Relief loosened my chest slightly. One of the suited men approached quietly, holding a large black umbrella. Up close, he looked even more intimidating than Damien somehow. Mid-40s, broad shoulders, earpiece hidden beneath dark hair streaked with gray. But when he spoke, his tone remained respectful. Sir, Damien glanced toward my Honda. We are leaving the vehicle here tonight. The man nodded. Once, without question. Understood. Something about that unsettled me. The absolute obedience. No hesitation, no discussion. Damien motioned toward the SUV waiting near the curb. Come on. The black Escalade looked enormous beside my little Honda. Polished, expensive, untouched by the chaos of ordinary life. One of the suited men opened the back door before I reached it. Warm air spilled out instantly, carrying the faint scent of leather and cedarwood. I froze beside the open door. The inside looked nicer than every apartment I had lived in combined. Damien noticed my hesitation. Claire. I looked up at him. Rainwater slid slowly down the sharp line of his jaw, while city lights reflected faintly in his dark eyes. You are safe. The words hit harder than they should have, because nobody had said that to me in a very long time. I climbed inside before I could change my mind. The door closed softly behind me, shutting out the storm almost completely. Silence wrapped around me immediately, thick, luxurious. The leather seats were warm beneath my frozen hands. Soft instrumental music played quietly somewhere or close the vehicle. God, I could not even remember the last time I sat somewhere warm without worrying how much it cost. Damien slid into the seat across from me moments later. One of the suited men took the driver's seat while the other settled into the front passenger side. The SUV pulled smoothly out of the parking lot. I watched my Honda disappear through Rain Street glass until it became nothing more than a small shape beneath flickering yellow lights. My chest tightened painfully. Damien followed my gaze. It will still be there tomorrow. That is not what I am worried about. His eyes shifted back toward me slowly. What are you worried about? I almost laughed at the question. Everything. Bills. My mother's health insurance. Nathan showing up again. My checking account sitting at $23.11. The fact that I was currently inside a luxury SUV with a stranger whose security team looked military trained. Instead, I just whispered, I do not know anymore. Damien leaned back slightly against the leather seat. The city lights passed across his face in flashes of gold and shadow, while Manhattan blurred outside the tinted windows. You have been surviving for too long, he said quietly. Eventually, survival starts feeling normal. I stared at him. You say that like you understand. A strange expression crossed his face then. Brief, gone almost instantly. Maybe I do. The driver turned onto the highway heading south toward Manhattan. Rain painted the skyline in blurred silver and gold beneath the dark sky. I should have been terrified. Maybe part of me was, but another part of me kept noticing impossible things instead. The quiet confidence in Damien's posture, the expensive watch glinting beneath his sleeve, the fact that everyone around him moved like protecting him mattered more than breathing. What exactly do you do? I asked again softly. Damien looked out the window for a long moment before answering. Importing, logistics, real estate. The answer sounded practiced, controlled, not entirely honest. That sounds expensive. A faint smile touched one corner of his mouth. It is. Silence settled again, while the SUV glided through rain-soaked streets. My body slowly relaxed, despite myself. Warmth spread painfully back into my frozen fingers. God. Even the air inside this car smelled expensive. Clean leather, dark cologne, fresh coffee somewhere near the front seat. My stomach growled again. Damien glanced toward me immediately. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. Instead, he reached toward the built-in console beside him and pulled out a small paper bag. Take it. I blinked at him. What is it? Food. He handed it across the space between us. Inside sat a turkey sandwich, wrapped neatly in paper and a bottle of water. Simple. Ordinary. But suddenly my throat tightened so badly I could barely breathe, because no one had taken care of me in a very long time. I stared at the sandwich too long, apparently, because Damien's voice softened slightly. Claire. I looked up. Eat. Something about the way he said it nearly broke me completely. I unwrapped the sandwich slowly with trembling fingers while the city lights reflected across the tinted windows around us. Damien looked away politely as I took the first bite, like he understood dignity mattered, even now. Warmth spread through my chest, painfully, with every swallow. Outside, Manhattan glowed through the storm, like another world entirely. And somewhere between the rain and the silence and the impossible warmth inside that black SUV, I realized I had already crossed a line I could not uncross. The deeper we moved into Manhattan, the quieter Damien became. Rain streaked across the tinted windows, while the city glowed around us in blurred gold and white lights. My body felt heavy in a way that scared me a little. Exhaustion had settled into my bones so deeply that even holding the sandwich in my lap took effort. I finished the last bite slowly, while Damien watched the skyline instead of me. The strange thing was that he never stared too long, never made me feel studied the way powerful men usually did. It was almost worse, because every small kindness from him felt deliberate, controlled, like he understood exactly how fragile I was right now and refused to push too hard. The SUV turned onto a quieter street, lined with old stone buildings and black iron gates. Expensive territory. The kind of neighborhood where people wore cashmere coats to walk purebred dogs before sunrise. I shifted nervously in the leather seat. Where are we? I asked softly. Upper East Side. Of course. Even his silence sounded expensive. The vehicle slowed before massive black iron gates that stood nearly 12 feet high. They opened immediately, without the driver saying a word. My stomach tightened. Beyond the gates stretched a long, curved driveway, lined with perfectly trimmed hedges and towering trees wrapped in soft white lights. The mansion appeared slowly through the rain, like something out of an old movie. Stone walls, massive windows, glowing gold against the dark storm. Elegant, cold, beautiful, in the kind of way that reminded you wealth could become its own form of power. I stopped breathing for a second. This is your house? Damien glanced toward me briefly. Yes. I looked back at the mansion again. House did not feel like the right word. Palaces probably looked less intimidating. The SUV rolled toward the front entrance where warm lights reflected against wet marble steps. Two more men in dark suits stood beneath the covered entrance, waiting silently. My pulse sped up immediately. Damien noticed. Relax, he said quietly. Nobody here is going to hurt you. The terrifying thing was that I believed him. The driver parked smoothly beneath the covered entrance and stepped out first. One of the men opened Damien's door, while another moved toward mine holding a large umbrella. I froze when the door opened. Reality crashed into me all at once. What was I doing here? 3 hours ago, I had been sleeping in a freezing parking lot. Now I was about to walk into a billionaire stranger's mansion in the middle of Manhattan at nearly 4 a.m. Every warning my mother ever taught me screamed inside my head. But when I looked up at Damien standing beneath the rain in his black coat, you are shaking. I had not even realized it. Cold and exhaustion rattled through my body hard enough now that my teeth almost chattered. Damien held out one hand toward me. Not demanding, not impatient, just waiting. I stared at his hand for half a second before finally taking it. Warm, steady. His fingers closed carefully around mine as he helped me step out of the SUV. The umbrella shielded us from most of the rain while we climbed the marble stairs together. My sneakers squeaked softly against polished stone floors the moment we entered the mansion. Heat wrapped around me instantly. Real heat. Not the weak air from my Honda's broken vents. Rich warmth, scented faintly with cedarwood and expensive candles. I stopped just inside the entrance, unable to hide my shock anymore. Black marble floors reflected golden chandelier light overhead. Massive paintings lined the walls beside dark wood paneling carved with intricate details. Everything looked impossibly elegant without feeling flashy. Quiet wealth, old money, the kind that did not need to prove itself. I suddenly became painfully aware of my appearance. Damp hoodie, wrinkled jeans, cheap sneakers stained from rainwater and city sidewalks. I looked like a stray animal someone accidentally let inside a museum. Damien removed his coat slowly while one of the men stepped forward to take it. "Marco," Damien said calmly, "this is Claire Bennett." The older man nodded respectfully toward me. Mid-50s, maybe. Silver threaded through dark hair. Sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Bennett," he greeted politely. His voice carried the same controlled professionalism as everyone else here. "Prepare the blue guest suite," Damien continued, "and ask Sophia to make tea and something warm for her to eat." My throat tightened unexpectedly. Nobody had spoken about taking care of me this gently in years. Marco nodded once. "Of course, sir." He disappeared immediately, without another question. I watched him go, before turning back toward Damien, carefully. "You really did not have to do all this." His dark eyes settled on me. "I know." That somehow made it worse. One of the women from the staff appeared quietly, moments later carrying folded towels. She offered me one with a kind smile that nearly shattered the little composure I had left. I took it quickly before she noticed my eyes burning again. God. I was exhausted. Damien watched me rub rainwater from my hair while silence settled around us. The mansion felt strangely quiet, despite its size. Safe, but beneath that safety lingered something else too. Something tense hidden beneath the polished marble and expensive lighting. I noticed cameras near the ceilings. Subtle but impossible to miss once you saw them. Security. Everywhere. "You live here alone?" I asked carefully. "Mostly." Not an answer. Again. Damien loosened the cuffs of his dark shirt slightly, while studying me with that same unreadable expression. "You need sleep." I probably smell terrible. A faint shadow of amusement crossed his face. "You smell like rain." My pulse stumbled embarrassingly fast. God, get a grip, Claire. He was just being polite. Probably. Sophia arrived carrying a silver tray with steaming tea and soup that smelled incredible. She looked somewhere in her 60s, with warm brown eyes and silver hair pinned neatly back. Unlike the security team, her smile reached her eyes immediately. "Poor thing," she murmured softly when she saw me fully beneath the lights. "You are frozen." Emotion climbed painfully into my throat. I nodded quickly because speaking suddenly felt dangerous. Sophia gently pressed the warm teacup into my hands. "Drink." I obeyed instantly. The heat spread through my fingers, almost painfully. Damien watched the exchange silently from a few feet away. Something unreadable softened briefly in his expression, seeing me hold that cup like it mattered more than gold. Sophia looked toward him knowingly. "The room is ready." Damien nodded once before, looking back at me. "Come on." I followed him up a sweeping staircase lined with dark wood and soft golden lighting. My legs felt heavier with every step. The mansion stretched endlessly around us in quiet luxury while stormlight flickered through tall windows overlooking the city. Halfway down the upstairs hallway, I finally whispered the question, sitting heavy in my chest since the parking lot. "Why did you stop for me tonight?" Damien slowed slightly ahead of me. Silence stretched between us for 3 long seconds before he answered, without turning around, because I know what it looks like when someone has nowhere left to go. Something in his voice made my chest ache unexpectedly, not pity, recognition. And for the first time since meeting Damien Moretti, I realized the loneliness inside this mansion might be just as real as the loneliness inside my car. The guest room was bigger than my entire apartment had been in Brooklyn. That thought hit me the second Damien opened the door, and warm lights spilled across polished hardwood floors and cream-colored walls. I stopped in the doorway, staring like an idiot while exhaustion fogged my brain. A king-sized bed sat near tall windows overlooking rain-soaked Manhattan. Soft golden lamps glowed beside dark wood furniture that probably cost more than my car. There was even a fireplace burning quietly against one wall. Real flames, real warmth. For one dizzy second, I genuinely thought I might cry again. Damien noticed the look on my face immediately. "Claire?" I swallowed hard. "This is a guest room?" A faint shadow of amusement crossed his expression. "Yes." I looked around once more, unable to hide my disbelief. Rich people are terrifying. That actually earned the smallest, real smile I had seen from him all night. Brief, gone almost instantly, but it changed his entire face for half a second. Softer, somehow, younger, more human. My stomach flipped embarrassingly fast. God, exhaustion was making me delusional. Damien stepped farther into the room while I lingered awkwardly near the doorway, clutching the warm teacup Sophia had forced into my hands downstairs. "The bathroom is through there," he said, motioning toward a marble doorway near the windows. "There are clean clothes inside." Sophia guessed your size. "You bought me clothes?" "No." Sophia keeps guest necessities prepared. Somehow that felt even more intimidating. I stared down at my damp sneakers. I really do not belong here. Silence settled briefly between us. When I looked back up, Damien was watching me with that same unreadable expression that made me feel exposed in ways I did not understand yet. "Neither did I," he said quietly. The words caught me off guard. Before I could ask what he meant, a sudden wave of dizziness hit hard enough to blur the room slightly. I grabbed the edge of the doorframe. Automatically, Damien crossed the room instantly. "Claire." His hand steadied my elbow carefully before I could lose balance completely. Warm fingers, controlled strength. The contact lasted maybe 3 seconds, but my pulse reacted like he had touched bare skin. Embarrassing. "I am okay," I whispered. "You are exhausted." I noticed. His eyes moved briefly across my face. "You have a fever." Wonderful. That explained the chills and the pounding headache behind my eyes. I probably just need sleep. Damien still looked unconvinced. "Sophia will bring medicine." "You really do not have to take care of me like this." "Apparently I do." The answer came so quietly, I almost missed it. Before I could respond, someone knocked softly at the open doorway. Sophia entered, carrying folded clothes and a small tray with medicine, bottled water, and another bowl of soup. The smell alone nearly broke me. Homemade chicken soup. The kind my mother used to make before hospital bills and overtime shifts slowly drained the warmth out of our lives. Sophia set everything gently on the bedside table before turning toward me with obvious concern. "You are pale as snow, sweetheart." The endearment hit harder than it should have. I nodded quickly before emotion could crawl visibly onto my face again. Damien stepped back slightly, giving Sophia room while she fussed over me with quiet efficiency. "Hot shower first," she instructed. "Then soup. Then sleep." "Yes, ma'am," I murmured automatically. Sophia smiled softly. "Good girl." Damien's gaze flickered toward me at those words. Something unreadable darkened briefly in his eyes before disappearing again. Maybe I imagined it. Probably exhaustion. Sophia handed me soft gray sweatpants, and an oversized black sweater that smelled faintly like fresh laundry and cedarwood. These should fit well enough for tonight. Thank you, I whispered, sincerely. She touched my arm gently. No one should be alone out there in weather like this. God, I needed everyone in this mansion to stop being kind to me before I completely fell apart. Damien moved toward the door slowly. Get some sleep, Claire. I looked up at him instinctively. What about you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. His expression shifted slightly. I have work at 4 a.m. Of course he did. Men like Damien probably never truly slept. I glanced toward the hallway behind him, noticing another suited man standing silently near the staircase downstairs through the open doorway. Always security, always watching. The realization settled heavily into my chest again. Whatever Damien Moretti actually did for a living, it was not normal. Damien? He paused at the doorway, turning slightly toward me. Thank you. Silence stretched for one heartbeat too long. Then he gave a small nod. Good night, Claire. He disappeared down the hallway moments later, leaving behind only the faint scent of rain and expensive cologne. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, listening to his footsteps fade somewhere downstairs. Strange. The mansion suddenly felt colder without him there. Sophia noticed me staring after him. He does not usually bring strangers home, she said carefully. My cheeks warmed instantly. It is not like that. Her smile turned knowing in a way that made me nervous. I did not say it was great. I escaped into the bathroom before she could embarrass me further. The bathroom itself looked bigger than most studio apartments in Manhattan. White marble, gold fixtures, heated floor. I actually laughed softly under my breath, standing there in my damp hoodie and worn jeans, looking like a raccoon that accidentally wandered into a luxury hotel. Then I caught my reflection in the mirror fully for the first time in days. God. Dark circles beneath red-rimmed eyes, tangled blonde hair, damp from rain, exhaustion carved into every inch of my face. I looked older than 25. Survival had a way of aging women quietly. I peeled off my soaked clothes slowly while steam filled the bathroom from the running shower. My ribs still ached faintly from sleeping curled inside the Honda night after night. Tiny bruises marked my knees from cramped positions against the steering wheel. I looked fragile, smaller somehow. The hot water nearly made me collapse from relief the second I stepped beneath it. Heat soaked into my freezing muscles, while exhaustion hit full force. I braced one hand against the marble wall, breathing shakily. Safe. For tonight, at least, I was safe. The thought felt almost unfamiliar now. When I finally emerged, wearing Sophia's borrowed clothes, my damp hair hanging loose around my shoulders, the bedroom looked even softer somehow, warmer. The fireplace crackled quietly while rain tapped gently against the tall windows overlooking Manhattan. I sat carefully on the edge of the enormous bed, staring at the bowl of soup, waiting beside the medicine. Nobody had needed anything from me tonight. No yelling, no demands, no conditions attached to kindness. Just warmth, food, safety. The realization terrified me more than sleeping in parking lots ever had, because dangerous men were easy to fear. But Damien Moretti was becoming something far more complicated. I woke up because someone was speaking Italian downstairs. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. My body felt heavy beneath impossibly soft blankets, while faint morning light spilled through the enormous windows overlooking Manhattan. For one disoriented second, panic slammed into my chest. I did not recognize the room. The fireplace had burned low during the night, casting soft amber light across polished floors and cream-colored walls. Then memory rushed back all at once. Rain, the parking lot, Damien. Slowly, carefully, I sat upright in the massive bed. Every muscle in my body ached less than it had yesterday. The fever haze had faded enough for me to think clearly again, which honestly made the situation feel even stranger. I was inside a billionaire's mansion wearing borrowed clothes after agreeing to follow a dangerous-looking man home in the middle of a thunderstorm. My mother would lose her mind if she knew. A strange warmth lingered in the room from the fireplace and thick blankets. Real warmth. Safe warmth. I had not slept this deeply in months, maybe longer. My phone sat charging beside the bed. I frowned immediately because I knew for a fact it had died 2 days ago in my car. Someone must have plugged it in while I slept. Probably Sophia. The thought tightened my chest unexpectedly. Tiny kindnesses always hit hardest when you spent too long surviving without them. I checked the screen. 7 missed calls from Nathan. 4 voicemail messages. 3 texts. My stomach dropped instantly. Where are you? Another one followed 10 minutes later. You cannot ignore me forever, Claire. Then the last message around 3 in the morning. Whoever you are with better watch his back. Fear curled coldly into my stomach. Even now, even inside this massive mansion with security cameras and men in tailored suits standing downstairs, Nathan still managed to make my pulse jump. I locked the screen immediately, trying not to think about it. The smell of coffee drifted faintly beneath the bedroom door. Real coffee. Rich and dark and expensive smelling. My stomach growled, embarrassingly loud. Apparently 1 sandwich and soup had not fixed 3 weeks of stress-eating crackers inside my Honda. I slipped carefully out of bed and walked toward the windows, barefoot. Manhattan stretched beneath gray morning skies, washed clean by the storm overnight. The city looked different from up here. Softer, somehow. Less cruel. Tiny yellow taxis crawled through streets far below, while steam rose from rooftops into pale morning light. I rested one hand lightly against the cool glass. Somewhere out there sat my little Honda in a grocery store parking lot with my entire life stuffed into the back seat. But up here felt like another universe entirely. Voices drifted upward faintly again. Male. Controlled. Speaking rapid Italian downstairs. I should not have been curious, but exhaustion and survival had apparently destroyed my survival instincts already. I cracked the bedroom door open carefully. Silence filled the hallway outside except for distant voices downstairs and the soft hum of central heating. The mansion looked even larger during daylight. Sunlight spilled across dark wood railings and polished marble floors below. I stepped quietly into the hallway, wearing the oversized black sweater Sophia gave me. My bare feet sank into thick, cream-colored carpet as I moved toward the staircase. The voices became clearer, halfway down. Damien's voice cut through the others instantly, low, calm, dangerous, in the same quiet way it had been in the parking lot. No, he said sharply. I said later. Another man responded quickly in Italian, frustrated. Damien answered again, colder this time. I could not understand the words, but tension rolled through the air heavily enough to feel physical. I stopped halfway down the staircase immediately. Below me, Damien stood near floor-to-ceiling windows wearing dark slacks and a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. God. Somehow daylight made him even more intimidating, more real. Morning light caught against the expensive silver watch on his wrist while 3 men in suits stood nearby listening carefully. One of them held documents. Another looked visibly nervous. Damien noticed me before anyone else did. Of course he did. His eyes lifted toward the staircase instantly, landing on me with unsettling precision. The entire room fell silent. I froze. Great. Fantastic. Now I looked like the creepy girl sneaking around rich people's houses barefoot at 7 in the morning. One of the suited men glanced between me and Damien curiously. Damien's expression changed almost imperceptibly. The cold edge vanished from his face so quickly I almost wondered if I imagined it before. Good morning, Claire. The shift in his voice stunned me. Softer, controlled still, but warmer somehow. Every other man in the room noticed too. I saw it in the quick exchanged looks before they carefully lowered their eyes. Strange. I am sorry, I said quickly. I did not mean to interrupt. Damien handed the papers back to one of the men without looking away from me. We are finished here. The men moved instantly. No hesitation, no argument. Within seconds, they disappeared deeper into the mansion, leaving only Damien standing near the windows watching me descend the staircase slowly. The silence felt strangely intimate now. Dangerous, in an entirely different way. Did you sleep? He asked. Like a dead person. One corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Good. I stopped near the bottom step, suddenly very aware of my appearance again. Barefoot. Borrowed clothes. Hair still messy from sleep. Damien looked painfully composed compared to me. His gaze moved briefly across my face, studying me carefully. Your fever broke. Apparently your mansion has magical healing powers. Or maybe your body just needed rest. Sophia appeared from somewhere behind the kitchen carrying a tray with coffee and breakfast, like she sensed tension before either of us did. Ah, she said warmly. You are awake. The smell nearly made me dizzy. Eggs, toast, bacon, fresh coffee, real food. Damien pulled out one of the dining chairs. Quietly. Sit. The command should have irritated me. Somehow it did not. I sat carefully at the massive dining table while Sophia poured coffee into delicate porcelain cups that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Damien remained standing for another moment, checking his phone briefly. His expression darkened, almost instantly. Problem? I asked before, thinking better of it. His eyes lifted toward me, slowly. Not anymore. Something about the answer sent chills softly down my spine. Not because he sounded threatening, because he sounded absolutely certain. Sophia placed a plate in front of me while Damien finally sat across the table. Morning light spilled across the sharp lines of his face, while steam curled between us from fresh coffee. For one strange suspended moment, everything felt dangerously normal. Like this was simply breakfast between two people instead of a girl who slept in her car and a man surrounded by armed security and whispered Italian conversations. Then my phone buzzed loudly against the table. Nathan's name flashed across the screen. Damien saw it immediately, and the warmth in his eyes disappeared. The room changed the second Damien saw Nathan's name on my phone screen. It was subtle. Most people probably would not have noticed it, but I did. The warmth disappeared from his eyes first. Then, the quiet ease in his posture hardened into something colder, more controlled, more dangerous. My stomach tightened instantly. I grabbed the phone too quickly, nearly knocking over my coffee in the process. I am sorry, I muttered. You do not need to apologize for someone else's behavior. His voice stayed calm, but there was an edge underneath it now, sharp enough to cut. Nathan's call kept vibrating across the table, over and over. Sophia glanced between us carefully, before quietly excusing herself from the dining room like she sensed tension building before I did. The moment she disappeared, silence settled heavily across the massive room. My phone finally stopped ringing, then immediately buzzed again with another text message. I flipped the screen over before I could read it. Too late. Damien had already seen enough. Your boyfriend seems persistent. The word boyfriend sounded wrong coming from him somehow. Ugly. Embarrassing. I stared down at the untouched coffee in front of me. He is not my boyfriend anymore. Damien leaned back slightly in his chair, studying me carefully. Morning light spilled across the sharp angles of his face while steam curled between us from untouched coffee cups. But he thinks he is. Not a question. I hated that he understood so quickly. I wrapped both hands around the warm coffee mug, trying to steady myself. Nathan does not really believe in boundaries. Damien's expression darkened almost imperceptibly. No, men like that usually do not. The way he said men like that made my pulse shift strangely. Like Nathan and Damien existed in entirely different categories, despite both being intimidating in completely opposite ways. My phone buzzed again, against the table. Another text. I ignored it. Damien did not. Is he dangerous? The question landed softly, but directly. My instinctive answer rose immediately. No, Nathan was not dangerous. That was what I always told myself. Dangerous men ended up on the news. Dangerous men carried weapons and ordered security teams around in Italian. Nathan was just angry, controlling, loud. But then memories slipped quietly through my mind anyway. Nathan gripping my wrist too tightly outside bars because I smiled at a waiter. Nathan punching walls beside my head during arguments. Nathan showing up outside my jobs unexpectedly because he missed me. My silence answered for me. Damien noticed. Of course he noticed. Claire. His voice lowered slightly. Gentler, somehow. Has he ever hurt you? My throat tightened immediately. No. Lie. Tiny lies counted too, apparently. Nathan never punched me. Never left bruises, serious enough to explain. But fear came in quieter forms too. The fear of making someone angry. The fear of checking your phone. The fear of saying the wrong thing and spending hours apologizing afterward just to restore peace. Damien watched me too carefully for comfort. You looked terrified when his truck entered that parking lot. I was exhausted. You were afraid. Silence. God. I hated feeling transparent around him. Most people looked right past me these days. Damien looked directly through me instead. I stared down into my coffee again because meeting his eyes suddenly felt impossible. Nathan does not like losing control, I admitted softly. And you leaving means losing control. I nodded once. Damien exhaled slowly through his nose, not frustrated at me, frustrated for me. Strange how easily I could tell the difference with him already. Another vibration rattled across the table. This time Damien reached for the phone before I could stop him. My heart jumped into my throat. Damien. He looked at the screen briefly before handing the phone back calmly. You should block him. I glanced down automatically. The newest message glowed harshly across the screen. You think some rich guy can hide you from me? Cold spread instantly through my chest. How did Nathan know? I had not told anyone where I was. Nobody even knew Damien existed. Damien saw my expression change immediately. What? I turned the phone toward him silently. His eyes scanned the message once. Nothing about his face changed outwardly, but the air around him seemed to sharpen somehow. Did you tell anyone where you were going? No. Anyone have your location? I do not think so. Damien stood abruptly from the table. Not rushed. Controlled. Somehow that felt worse. He crossed the dining room toward one of the large windows overlooking Manhattan while pulling his phone from his pocket. Marco, he said calmly once the line connected. Calmly. Too calmly. I want the vehicle from last night identified. White pickup truck. Send someone to the grocery lot immediately and check Claire's car for tracking devices. My pulse stumbled. Tracking devices? Jesus Christ. Damien listened silently for another few seconds before ending the call. When he turned back toward me, his expression softened slightly again, noticing my face. Relax. You think he tracked my car? I think paranoid men do stupid things when they realize they are losing control. The terrifying part was how casually he said it, like this sort of thing happened around him often. I suddenly became very aware again that Damien Moretti was not normal either. Safer than Nathan somehow, yes. But normal? Absolutely not. I should leave, I whispered suddenly. The words surprised even me. Damien stilled completely. Why? Because this is becoming your problem. Something unreadable flashed across his face then. Fast. Dangerous. Claire. He walked slowly back toward the table until he stood directly across from me again. You became my problem the second I found you sleeping alone in that parking lot during a thunderstorm. My heartbeat kicked painfully hard against my ribs. That is not your responsibility. Maybe not. His dark eyes locked onto mine. But it is still happening. Silence stretched tightly between us. I could hear the soft ticking of some distant clock somewhere deeper inside the mansion. Feel the warmth from untouched coffee cooling slowly between my hands. Damien leaned one hand lightly against the back of the dining chair across from me, close enough now that I could smell cedarwood and expensive cologne again beneath faint traces of coffee. "Look at me," he said quietly. I did. Big mistake. His gaze held mine with terrifying steadiness. "You are safe here." The words should not have affected me this much anymore, but they did. God, they did. Because nobody had ever said them with this kind of certainty before. Not like a promise, like a fact. My eyes burned unexpectedly. I looked away fast before humiliation could fully destroy me. "You barely know me." Damien's voice softened slightly. "I know enough." My phone buzzed again in my hand. Another message from Nathan. Another demand. Another threat wrapped in fake concern. Damien glanced briefly toward the screen before looking back at me. "Block him," he repeated calmly. "And if he shows up here?" For the first time since meeting him, something cold entered Damien's smile. Not cruel. Worse. Confident. Then he will learn boundaries. I blocked Nathan's number with trembling fingers, while Damien watched me from across the dining table. The second the screen went dark, something strange settled inside my chest. Not relief, exactly. More like standing at the edge of a cliff after finally cutting the rope tied around your waist. Freedom still felt terrifying when you were not used to it. Damien noticed the way my hands shook slightly afterward. Of course he did. He noticed everything. "Good," he said quietly. I let out a breath I did not realize I was holding and set the phone face down beside my coffee cup. Morning sunlight filtered through the massive windows now, washing the dining room in soft gold instead of storm shadows. Everything looked calmer in daylight, safer. But Damien still carried that same dangerous stillness beneath his perfectly controlled expression. "You really think he tracked my car?" I asked softly. Damien rested one hand against the back of the chair beside him. "I think insecure men become obsessive when they realize they are losing access to someone. Access. Not love. Not relationship. Access." The word hit me harder than I expected, because it was painfully accurate. Nathan never loved quietly. Everything with him felt possessive, loud, like affection came attached to ownership papers. Damien glanced briefly toward my untouched plate. "Eat before the coffee gets cold." "You always sound like you are giving orders." One dark eyebrow lifted slightly. "And yet you keep listening." I hated the tiny flutter that caused in my stomach. God, this man was a problem. A very expensive, emotionally confusing problem. I picked up my fork, mostly to avoid looking directly at him. The eggs tasted incredible. Real butter, fresh herbs, rich flavors my body practically melted over after weeks of gas station food and vending machine snacks. Embarrassing how close I came to crying over breakfast lately. Damien sat across from me, sipping black coffee while checking messages on his phone occasionally. Every few seconds another text appeared. Calls, emails, names I did not recognize. His entire world seemed to move constantly around him, even while sitting perfectly still at a breakfast table. "Do you ever stop working?" I asked quietly. "Not really. That sounds unhealthy." A faint shadow of amusement crossed his face. "You slept in your car for 3 nights. Fair point." Silence settled comfortably for a few moments, while sunlight climbed higher across the marble floors. Somewhere deeper inside the mansion, I heard faint movement from staff beginning their mornings. Despite the size of the house, nothing felt chaotic. Everything moved smoothly, quietly, controlled, like Damien himself. My gaze drifted toward the massive windows, overlooking Manhattan again. The city looked impossibly far away from up here, like another life entirely. What happens now? I asked before I could stop myself. Damien looked up immediately. What do you mean? I mean, I hesitated. This was only supposed to be one night. His expression gave nothing away. Do you want to leave? The question twisted unexpectedly in my chest. Because logically, yes, of course I should leave. Staying here was insane. Dangerous, probably. But another part of me remembered cold parking lots and sleeping with one eye open while praying nobody knocked on my windows at 2 in the morning. Compared to that, this mansion felt dangerously close to peace. I do not know, I admitted honestly. Damien studied me quietly over the rim of his coffee cup. Then do not decide today. The simple practicality in his tone startled me. No pressure, no manipulation, just patience. Men like Nathan always demanded immediate answers, immediate reassurance. Damien simply created space around me and waited. Somehow, that felt infinitely more powerful. My phone buzzed once against the table. Unknown number this time. My stomach dropped instantly. Damien noticed my expression before I even reached for the phone. Do not answer it. I stared at the screen while it rang, then stopped. A voicemail notification appeared seconds later. Fear crawled slowly up my spine again. Claire. I looked up at Damien. Listen to me carefully. His voice lowered slightly. Steadier somehow. You do not owe anyone access to you simply because they demand it. The words landed painfully deep. Because somewhere along the line I started believing love meant constant availability, constant forgiveness, constant shrinking to keep someone else comfortable. Damien leaned back slightly in his chair while sunlight caught the silver watch beneath his rolled sleeve. People who care about you should make your life quieter, not harder. God, nobody had ever explained it like that before. My throat tightened unexpectedly. I looked down quickly, pretending to focus on breakfast before he noticed my eyes burning again. Too late, probably. He always noticed. You make it sound simple, I whispered. It is simple. His dark eyes held mine steadily. It is just not easy. Silence stretched softly between us afterward. Not awkward, just full, heavy with things neither of us fully understood yet. Then footsteps echoed from the hallway nearby. Marco appeared beside the dining room entrance, holding a tablet in one hand, professional as always. But something about his posture seemed tighter this time. Damien noticed instantly. What is it? Marco glanced briefly toward me before answering carefully. The vehicle was checked. My stomach clenched immediately. Damien's expression sharpened, and there was a tracker attached beneath the rear bumper. Cold flooded through me so fast my fingers went numb around the coffee mug. No, 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 no. Marco continued calmly, like he was discussing weather instead of my life. Recently installed, probably within the last 48 hours. I stared at him, unable to breathe properly for a second. Nathan, Jesus Christ. Damien stood slowly from the table. Not angry outwardly. Somehow that felt worse. Dispose of it, he said quietly. Marco nodded once. Already done. I looked between them, with my heart hammering painfully against my ribs. He really tracked me? My voice sounded small, fragile. Damien turned toward me fully then. Something cold lingered beneath his expression now. Not directed at me. Never at me. Yes. Shame hit almost immediately after fear. Shame for not seeing it sooner. Shame for still doubting myself every time Nathan crossed another line. I wrapped my arms around myself automatically. Damien crossed the room before I even realized he moved. He stopped directly beside my chair, close enough for warmth and cedar wood to surround me again. Claire. I looked up slowly. His expression softened the second our eyes met. This is not your fault. The words nearly undid me completely, because he sounded absolutely certain. No hesitation, no pity, just certainty. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. I should have known. No. His voice sharpened slightly. You should have been able to trust someone who claimed to care about you. Silence, heavy and warm and painful, all at once. My chest tightened so badly I could barely breathe around it. Damien crouched slightly beside the chair, then, bringing himself level with my eyes for the first time since I met him. The movement felt strangely intimate, dangerous in a completely different way now. Look at me, he said softly. I did. Big mistake again. Because every time this man looked directly at me, the rest of the world blurred slightly around the edges. Nobody is going to touch your car, he said quietly. Nobody is going to follow you, and nobody is going to threaten you while you are under my roof. Under my roof. The words wrapped around me with terrifying warmth, possessive somehow, protective too. And the worst part? Some broken, exhausted part of me wanted to believe him completely. The rest of breakfast passed in a strange silence after Marco confirmed the tracker. Not awkward exactly. Heavy. My appetite disappeared completely, even though the food in front of me probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget used to. Damien noticed immediately. Eat, he said quietly. I am not hungry anymore. That is anxiety talking. I stared down at the untouched toast on my plate. You make everything sound simple. Damien leaned one arm against the dining chair beside me, watching carefully. That is because panic makes people complicate things. Easy for you to say. Something flickered briefly across his face then. Not anger. Recognition, maybe. No, he said softly. Not easy for me either. Before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed sharply against the table. The screen lit up with a name I did not recognize. Luca Bianchi. Damien's expression changed instantly. Colder. Focused. He answered without hesitation. What happened? The entire room seemed to tighten around him while he listened silently. I could not hear the voice on the other end, but I saw the subtle shift in Damien's posture. Dangerous calm. The kind that made everyone around him quieter automatically. I will handle it, he said finally. No one moves until I get there. He ended the call and looked toward Marco immediately. Conference room, 10 minutes. Marco nodded once and disappeared without another word. My stomach tightened, watching the interaction. Everything about it felt bigger than ordinary business problems. More serious, somehow. Damien turned back toward me, and just like that, the dangerous edge vanished from his face again. God, how did he do that? I need to work for a few hours, he said calmly. Sophia will stay with you. I nodded automatically. Okay. He studied me carefully, like he was deciding something internally. You still look tired. I slept in a car for 3 nights. Recovery takes time. A faint shadow of amusement touched his mouth. Fair point. He moved toward the doorway before stopping suddenly. Claire. I looked up immediately. This house has security everywhere, he said quietly. You do not need to be afraid here. There it was again. That impossible certainty in his voice. Like safety was something he could simply decide into existence. I nodded softly. Thank you. His gaze held mine 1 second too long before he finally disappeared down the hallway. The second he left, the dining room felt emptier somehow, which was ridiculous. I had known this man less than 24 hours. Sophia returned moments later carrying fresh coffee and giving me a look far too perceptive for 8 in the morning. He likes you. I nearly choked on air. What? Sophia smiled calmly while collecting empty plates. Mr. Moretti does not usually notice anyone outside his work. Heat rushed instantly into my cheeks. He found me sleeping in a parking lot. I think this is more pity than romance. Sophia hummed softly, like she did not believe me for 1 second. Men like Damien do not pity. They protect. The way she said it sent a strange shiver down my spine. Protect. The word sounded different attached to Damien. Less gentle. more absolute. Sophia motioned toward the massive windows overlooking Manhattan. Come. You need sunlight after hiding in cars. I laughed quietly despite myself and followed her toward the sitting room nearby. Morning light flooded the enormous space through floor-to-ceiling windows while soft jazz played quietly somewhere hidden in the walls. I sank carefully onto a cream-colored couch that probably cost more than my student loans. Sophia handed me another cup of coffee before sitting across from me. You have kind eyes, she said suddenly. I blinked. That is random. No. Observant. She smiled softly. People with kind eyes usually survive too much. The comment hit uncomfortably close to home. I wrapped both hands around the warm coffee cup, trying not to think about how accurately she saw me after less than one day. How long have you worked here? I asked quietly. 22 years. My eyebrows lifted immediately. That long. Since Damien was younger than you are now. Something softened in her expression, mentioning him, maternal almost. He built all this very quickly. I glanced around the mansion again. What exactly does he do? Sophia's smile became careful immediately. Many things. Definitely not suspicious at all. I laughed softly under my breath. That answer usually means illegal things. Instead of looking offended, Sophia simply stirred sugar slowly into her tea. The world is not always divided into good people and bad people, Claire. That sounds ominous. It is realistic. Silence settled between us while sunlight warmed the room softly. Somewhere upstairs, footsteps echoed faintly across polished floors. Security moved constantly through the mansion in quiet patterns I was only beginning to notice. Nothing here ever truly relaxed. You are afraid of him a little, Sophia observed gently. I stared into my coffee. Should I not be? Her eyes softened. Fear is healthy, but trust your instincts too. My instincts were the problem. Because every instinct around Damien contradicted itself completely. One part of me recognized danger immediately. The expensive security, the whispered Italian conversations, the way powerful men obeyed him without hesitation. But another part of me remembered him standing in the rain outside my Honda speaking softly so he would not scare me more than I already was. Remembered warm soup beside a fireplace. Remembered him saying nobody would threaten me under his roof with terrifying certainty. He looks at you differently already, Sophia murmured. Heat crawled up my neck instantly. Please stop saying things like that. She smiled knowingly over her teacup. You noticed too. Before I could embarrass myself, further responding, raised voices echoed faintly somewhere deeper inside the mansion. Male voices. Sharp. Tense. My body stiffened automatically. Sophia remained completely calm. Business, she said lightly, but the tension in the air changed instantly anyway. I heard footsteps moving quickly down another hallway, followed by a door shutting hard enough to echo through the marble floors. My pulse sped up, despite myself. Is everything okay? Sophia looked toward the hallway thoughtfully. With Damien, problems always exist. Somehow, that answer worried me more. Another voice echoed faintly through the mansion. Angry this time, Italian words I could not understand. Then silence. Heavy silence. A few seconds later, Damien appeared in the doorway of the sitting room. His black dress shirt sleeves were still rolled neatly to his forearms, but something about him looked sharper now, colder. The room itself seemed to react to his presence automatically. Sophia sat straighter. Security near the hallway became more alert. Damien's eyes found mine instantly. Always instantly. Claire, he said calmly, I need you to stay inside the house today. My stomach tightened. Why? His expression remained perfectly controlled. Because someone has been asking questions about you.